is the meaning of exploited power or authority or self and injustice again. It involves a person or even a group such as a government or a business people abusing their potential of authority for wealth or other advantage. They can be barbarians, embezzlement, fraud, and nepotism, among other form of corruption, which uh, which erode trust and confidence in the institutions and social order. At its most basic, corruption is opportunistic and need environment with the law complemented and transparency. That means most of the time people in power will always favor their selfish and end of and over the society as a whole. What is the cause? Corruption areas because of variety of reasons. However, most of the normal, including greedy, lack of property, government, and ineffective law enforcement in the abusing of such chicks people with discussions make authority may consider it safe individuals in action. They benefit them without fear of consequences. Corruption also has a social causes like poverty, high inequality, and lack of educations, as some would perceive it as the only mean necessary for survival or progress. Without an environment that promotes uploading the principles of transparency and accountability, corruptions is able to take root, which leads distress, inconvenience, and hinders development, achieves both society and economy. Example, the so-called rotation car wash is one of the most known examples for corruption. The Petrobras scandal in Brazil. This time it was revealed that the top management of Brazil state-controlled oil company Petrobras has been prepared by constructions companies of inflating contraction. These companies won contract with Petrobras. The overcharge for the prospect of service and sales was a return to political and business people in preparedness. This remind shame not only robbed the state-owned company for billions of dollars, but also uncovered systematic multiplication at nearly even equal business people in preparedness. This remind shame not only robbed the state-owned company for billions of dollars, but also uncovered systematic multiplication at nearly even equal of political and business empowerment. The investigation reveals that this system was worked for some times and involved not only Petrobras officials but also very high political, including these from ruling parts funds reloading from kickback were analyzed to cover illegally political power. The second shook that very foundation of political life in Brazil, with a limited result being of impact of President Dalian Risov, and commonly for many high-profile political and businessmen. The cause of Petrobras showed that unvalued transformation for society into quiz totalitarianity regardment make that phenomenon it teach how much it need analysis and transparency on the thugs of the law when in dealing.
A very good morning or evening to you, madam. My name is Gautam Menon. My student ID is 2024070100052. I will be representing Group 6, and as for my part, I will be talking about the impacts that corruption can do. Previously, Omar has explained what is corruption and what can corruption do. So I will be talking about the impacts. So firstly, although many students agree that corruption hinders economic growth, some scholars argue that its impact is influenced by factors like the country's legal system, governance quality, and political regime. It determines that in certain highly regulated countries lacking efficient government institutions and government systems, corruptions can serve as a solution for red tape and institutional deficiencies, while also facilitating economic processes. This argument does not hold up under examination of the lasting harmful effects of corruption on economic growth, equality, and the country's governance and institutions. Evidence suggests that corruption is expected to have negative effects on the economy, and in the long run by affecting investment, taxation, public spending, and human development. Corruption is also probably to weaken the regulatory framework and the effectiveness of government institutions due to rent-seeking, distorting incentives and decision-making processes. As for impacts on businesses, numerous researchers projects have concentrated on determining if corruption has a negative impact on economic growth or if it can also benefit the economy by facilitating certain processes. Although many agree that corruption hinders the economic growth and development, some scholars suggest that it can be justified by offering ways to circumvent cumbersome regulations and enabling the private sectors to address government shortcomings and inefficiencies. It could stimulate economic development by eliminating bureaucratic obstacles for new businesses and reducing the transaction expenses associated with excessive regulations. Due to a case in 2005, Mion and Sekat gave through analysis of supporters and critics of this theory. Certain research also suggests that negative effects of corruption on economic growth may vary depending on factors like the economic legal system, governance quality, and political regime. Additional research indicates that influence on corruption on economic growth development could vary depending on type of political system in place. Some studies countered that this argument by suggesting that corruption can actually dampen the effects of ineffective institutional and regulatory systems instead of boosting economic growth. In a 2011 study, it was proposed that the corruption can lead to a higher rate of business entering the market when faced with obstacles to entry. As for macro level of analysis, utilizing data and multiple countries have to investigate difference in governance and economic factors have constantly shown that corruption negatively impacts economic growth and development. One instance is when corruption is instantly linked with reduced growth rates, GDP per capita, economic equality, and levels of human development in cross-country data. Likewise, in a 2011 systematic review examining the impact of corruption on economic growth, found in the corruption that has direct and adverse effect on growth in low-income countries such as Uyghur and Disputa. Based on this analysis, corruption can also indirect impacts through channels like investment, human capital, and public finance or spending. Although corruption has consistent impacts on growth across countries, the quality indicates that contextual factors like development level and governance quality can help lessen these effects. Corruption is predicted to have a more negative impacts on countries with higher per capita income and more better institutions. There are various types of corruption. Corruptions can be defined as and categorized in different ways. The most common type of category of corruption are supply versus demand corruption, grand versus petty corruption, conventional corruption, unconventional corruption, and corruption such as a systematic versus individual or isolated corruption by commission versus or by omission by the degree or coincidence used to perform the legal act and the type of benefit provided. Supply side corruption is used to describe the act of offering an illicit payment or undue advantage, whereas demand side corruption relates to acceptance or solicitation of such a payment or advantage. Active and passive corruptions are the terms that have been used synonymously with supply and demand corruption. Conventional corruption occurs when government officials, whether higher or lower ranking, illegitimately receive or accumulate an undue advantage for their own personal use, disregarding public interest. There is an element of reciprocity within conventional corruption. Both the solicitation and the acceptance of bribes, supply and demand bribes, are therefore considered both of conventional corruption. Unconventional corruptions exist where a public or government official acts without consideration of the public's interests. Other than that, there is the great and minor corruption that are both types of ordinary corruption. Petty corruption is sometimes seen as synonymous with a bureaucratic corruption, and which suggests the participation of public administration officials and non-elected officials. Example of petty corruption includes bribes given to the law enforcement officers, custom agents, healthcare providers, and various government officials. Facilitation payments, also referred as grease payments, are included in this classification. High-level government officials and politicians engage in grand corruption by taking advantage of opportunities within their roles, like infrastructure and construction. Political corruption is classified as grand corruption because of its severity and involvement in top-ranking public officials. Corruption is present at the highest level of government, where officials responsible for enforcing laws are themselves corrupt. And state capture, another form of high-level corruption, is known to occur when a business or group of businesses manipulates and controls the legislation or policies of a specific industry, such as the mining industry or the taxation industry, through financial transactions. There are many ways to prevent corruption. I believe the first way can be firms and organizations around the world. Each year, billions of dollars disappear in a result of bribery or corruption. Firms face great risk of bribery from third parties. So how can we identify this? How can business avoid bribery and corruption, especially when working with third parties and staff members? First on your agenda should be identifying red flags that indicate potential bribery and corruption is occurring. Illegitimate payments may be disguised as legitimate expenses on occasion. If a worker buys an unneeded or suitable item for a supplier or a contractor without a clear business justification, it may show signs of corrupt connection. Besides that, be cautious on regular small orders, or buying in bulk without bribes can be hidden within invoices. For instance, bill can be sent with no actual completed or lacking any supporting documents, draining money from the company. Corrupt payments can be hidden in invoices as an additional fees, expenses, or charges. We have to watch out for inflated invoices or invoices that cannot be without supporting documentation. This should raise alarm bells. It is also important to always watch out for a pattern of suspicious invoices, as they may be used for financial bribe payments. The likelihood of bribery and corruption rises when there are strong ties between an employee and a supplier or a contractor. Nepotism and cronyism can, at their worst, impair your ability to make sound judgments and policies that are only for the equation for staff. Establishing a culture against bribery requires a clear and constant communication from senior management. It is essential for all the board's members of directors, business owners, and compliance function to communicate with their zero tolerance to communicate that there will be zero tolerance for bribery and corruption, ensuring that those caught will be severely punished. Nevertheless, it is crucial for leaders to demonstrate their commitment and to anti-bribery policies by practicing what they have to promote and valuing their importance. If not, employers will not accept the culture, and discussion about anti-bribery training will not be taken seriously. So, there are many ways to prevent corruption, as I've stated. So, in conclusion, I believe that if we follow these ways to prevent corruption, our country will be a much better place in terms of financial economy and in terms of economical growth. That is all from me today. Thank you, madam. Have a great day.